Well, well, well. Looks like weekend at Biden's continued today in full force.
And the FEMA administrator, who's become the MVP here these days, I spent a lot of time in this room, Griswold of FEMA and the entire workforce.
Griswold, yeah, no, wrong again, Mr. President. It's Criswell, not Griswold. That was from another movie. I think we're well beyond hope here, folks. Even in a moment of natural disaster, in a state of emergency, this man managed to forget the name of the person in charge of handling the disaster, administrator of FEMA. Like when Joe landed in Israel, remember that? And the front line of the whole world said the exact worst thing possible.
To keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust, honor those we lost, so that we never, ever, ever forget that lesson.
Wow, truth and honor of the Holocaust. How do you screw up a comment about the Holocaust in Israel? Keep alive the honor, truth and honor of the Holocaust. How many of these do we have to endure? How is this okay with everyone? I mean, the President of the United States of America sees dead people. How long are we going to do this, folks?
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
Where's Jackie? Jackie's dead. The President of the United States of America sees dead people. How long are they going to pretend it's not a real problem without failing? Watch.
President think that she's living and in the room?
I don't find that confusing. I mean,
Oh, no.
I think many people can speak to sometimes when you have someone top of mind, they're top of mind, exactly that. That is not an unusual scenario there.
Karine, I have John Lennon top of mind just about every day, but I'm not looking around for him anywhere.
When you sign a bill for John Lennon as president, then we can have this conversation. Okay, go ahead.
What the heck was that all about? What on earth is she talking about? Joe Biden has what on what mind now? And thanks, by the way, to our very own James Rosen for bringing the Beatles into this. And yes, I still think I know the Stones are better. But really, it's downright mind-boggling, shocking even, the depths Karine and company will go to have to really, in order to make Joe Biden, Dementia Joe, less dementia. Listen.
If the late Congresswoman was top of mind for the president and her family was expected to be here and that's what he was thinking about, why was he looking for her? I'm not trying to be snarky here.
No. I mean, as he was naming folks, she was on top of mind, and he understands and knew that he was.
Well, don't you think, come on now, don't you think this is all unusual? Don't you think it's all unusual for the President of the United States of America, the leader of the free world, the man with the nuclear codes, don't forget, don't you think it's all unusual to bring up the name of a tragically deceased Congresswoman, Jackie Walorski, by the way, whose family was supposedly going to see on Friday, to ask where is Jackie during a conference on Wednesday, 2 days prior? And you, Karine, don't you think that's unusual at all? Maybe not for you in your post, Karine. It's probably not unusual, shocking, surprising for you. But forgive me, forgive us, forgive the American people for thinking that it's pretty darn unusual. And oh yeah, not to mention it's also really not okay. It may be okay if it were once, twice, 30, 40, 50 times. I'm a numbers guy. Well, let me tell you, there's just no way to keep count of how many moments there have been like this. This is the biggest cover-up in history, folks, but also the worst cover-up in the world. Cat is so far out of the bag, it's built a permanent home outside the bag.
Pretty good shape, huh?
Yep. Which leads to my next question. You are more aware of this than anyone. Some people ask whether you are fit for the job. And when you hear that, I wonder what you think.
Watch me.
Yeah, watch me. This presidency, this perpetual weekend at Biden's movie has officially reached its pinnacle of holy cow. It's the pinnacle of obvious, at least one would think, and yet without even a blink or a flinch, they continue to duck and cover the most nuclear disaster of presidencies and a barrage of indisputably nuclear deadly moments. I mean, how many times does he have to get lost at the White House. How many times, wait for it, turn here, sir, turn here, sir. We've seen it before, but never gets old. Oopsie. How many times does he have to be lost? What am I doing now? What am I doing now? Come on, step over here. How many times does he have to fall asleep? World leader. How many times does he have to fall up? Oh, not fall up. How many times does he have to fall down? How many times does he have to mistake some of the most important numbers?
And a lot of people you have unnecessarily. Now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
150 million people have been killed since 2007.
He has no grasp. He has no idea about numbers. That's the first sign of dementia, folks. How many times does he have to make the gravest of errors?
You have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well equipped as any army in the world, and an Air Force.
How many times, folks, does he have to forget who's actually president?
All kidding aside, of course, President Harris is a proud Howard alum.
Yeah. I think I actually long for the plagiarizing senator, the racist senator, the flip-flopping senator. He was always crooked. He was always lying, swampy, but at least he was lucid. At least he was signing crime bills. Remember that? At least he said things that made sense in English, if not for our country. There's actually no one, not one former press secretary, not even some of the best who have ever held the title. No one could cover up this Biden disaster the way they do. Joe Biden has a career filled with gaffes. It's well documented. He's joked about it. The media has joked about it. Right here on the show, we've shown you the decline in real time. It's like it's on fast forward in just the past year alone. He's being walked on and off stages like a feeble old man who's seeing the end of his twilight life. It's hard to watch any person go through that. But come on, guys. This is the president. And what's worse, that each of the people responsible for covering it up will also be responsible for what happens next. This is beyond dangerous for this country. This is even beyond calling one of the world's biggest dictatorships an alliance of ours.
So the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring. Yeah.
All right. An important alliance. What did you just say with North Korea, Vice President? Just a reminder that if he goes, if something happens to the big guy, she's the one in charge. But what happened yesterday, to me, is truly one of the most shocking moments of the whole Biden presidency. It's not what Joe Biden said and did, because that was horrible, but it wasn't even that shocking given what we've seen. No, one of the most shocking moments came in the form of Jean-Pierre, her attempt to justify the Biden moment of mentioning a dead congressman like he expects her to be sitting in the front row looking for her, of asking, where is she? And for Corinne to make it seem completely normal, nothing to see here, folks, for the President of the United States to be at that level of confused. That makes her and everyone else near this man complicit in what could happen next. And even worse, the complicit mainstream media won't even call her out, Corinne, won't even call her out for it, because she works for the man who is not Donald Trump. Because they wanted it so badly to be anyone but Donald Trump that they put a declining, decrepit dementia in chief up there. The longer they allow this presidency to go on, the more they defend it, the more you have moments like this.
I just want to say a number. 0. Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation.
No, Joe.
In
no, Joe.
the month of July.
No, Joe, you had 8%, 8.3% actually. 0, it's not 0. 0 is not the right number, Joe, but you know what? I want to say number 2. 25, as in the 25th Amendment. Why is this not being discussed more seriously right now? Each and every person covering for Joe Biden, normalizing this, justifying this, is complicit in the political danger, the potential danger, even catastrophe that comes with having that guy right there, Joe Biden, in that office. Right now, Joe Biden is calling out for dead people. And his number 2 is saying at the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, with the world watching, that we have an important alliance with North Korea. This man has to be led around by his wife and the Easter Bunny and by note cards reminding him he's president. And what does he have to do when he enters a room? Carry out presidential duties and meetings. And everyone just thinks this is normal. This is okay presidential behavior.